Our next presenter is TJ Pepping, and TJ works for Apt Associates, again, another environmental consulting firm that provides a lot of support to the Toxics Release Inventory Program and to other programs within the US EPA. TJ?
Great. Thanks, Steve. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you fine. Thank you.
Great. So I'm going to do a demo of a tool today. I'll first run through some slides, but I will try to get through them quickly so we can get to the demo portion. So I'll be talking about the TRI Toxics Tracker tool. So I'll give a brief background of the TRI program, although you've heard a lot about it already. I'll go over some details of the Toxics Tracker tool, and then give an overview and live demo of the tool and its P2 and EJ related features. Just a quick disclaimer about my role as a contractor. So getting into the meat of it. So TRI, as we've heard today, has a lot of information about chemical releases from industrial facilities. That includes things like on-site releases, transfers that waste to other locations, waste management activities, as well as pollution prevention activities. And just a reminder of the scope of this, each year when the data is collected, that covers somewhere between 22,000 facilities, just depending on the year, and hundreds of different toxic chemicals. In terms of reporting requirements, there's a lot of manufacturing that's covered, as well as various other types of facilities. There are employment thresholds, so at least 10 full-time employees, as well as chemical-specific thresholds, so manufacturing, processing, or otherwise using chemicals above a certain amount each year. That still ends up including a lot of facilities and a lot of information. And in terms of the information, this is just a quick overview. Again, these slides will be available afterwards for if you want to go through in more detail, but there's facility data, chemical data, release data, again, information about the transfers of chemicals, as well as what facilities are doing to manage that waste, and then the pollution prevention data, what Cheryl just talked about. In terms of how this information can help communities, it's a really great resource to be able to look at which facilities are reporting in your community or community of interest, looking at the quantities of chemicals reported by facilities in or near that community, looking at trends over time, whether they're increases or reductions, as well as comparing the releases in your community with similar facilities in other parts of the country. And hopefully through all that, you're able to prioritize efforts to then reduce the pollution from those facilities, whether that's engaging with those facilities, working with community leaders, doing research, whatever it may be. There are various limitations of the data. I'll just skip through these real quick. One big one is that it's annual data, so there's not necessarily going to be information about fluctuations throughout the year. And there are various different reporting requirements. Sometimes there might be things like certain types or chemical forms are reported, but not others. And there are various, of course, other types of pollution sources not covered under TRI. So it's a great starting point and can definitely help inform a kind of larger community level analysis. One component of it, there were some sessions about this yesterday, but EPA has a risk screening environmental indicator model, or RISI, and some of that information is included in this toxics tracker tool. Essentially what it does, again, just to quickly summarize, is take the data reported to TRI for air and water releases and incorporate additional information like relative chemical toxicity, how the chemical moves through the environment in terms of its fate and transport, as well as potential exposure, just to help give a better sense of that potential risk associated with the releases. It does not necessarily equate that to actual risk, so it's again a screening level tool that helps to sort of better determine where there might be opportunities that you'd want to look into and conduct a more formal risk assessment. The
Jay,
toxic
I'm
track.
sorry to interrupt. This is Sarah. Should your slides be advancing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Were they not?
They're not.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay, TJ.
Thank you for letting me know.
Thank you for somebody in the chat panel letting us know.
Okay. Well, the slides will be So I'm glad we. So in terms of this tool for the rest of this on, really a location-based search tool, although there are plenty of other ways to cut the data, and provides a quick based on whatever search criteria you're interested in using. Access it directly from the homepage, which is how we'll jump into it. There is a light version or basic version, as well as a full version that has 10 years, the most recent 10 years of data. There's also a Spanish version available that was published recently just to help reach a broader audience. In location searches, you can do it based on an address. The default is within 10 miles of that address. You can also use place names, for example, Disneyland, or particular city names, any area of interest. And you can then view all the TRI facilities that are within that area. You can also search for individual facilities and look up their information if there's a particular one that is of interest. In the sections that we'll go over, this is just running through them, but again, there's lots of different facets to the TRI data, and the tool makes it really easy to see all of that information summarized for your particular selection. In addition to TRI data, there are other sources of data that we pull in there. For example, census block demographic information from EJ Screen, as well as a few other EPA resources such as compliance and enforcement data. Diving deeper into the demographic data is one example. That data is pulled from EPA's EJ Screen tool. And there's a linkage between the facilities that report to TRI and which census blocks they're in, so you can get more information about the demographics of those communities. So now we'll shift to the demonstration. And again, these slides will be available online, so my apologies for not sharing that properly. But I want to read through in more. Let me share. Perfect. So on the TRI homepage, if you just scroll to the bottom, that's where the TRI Toxics Tracker tool is. And again, this version of the tool is a more basic light version. It's really meant to be an introduction to the TRI data. There are lots of different options for doing the location search, but I will, again, just focus on an address. I always use my old college apartment in St. Louis, Missouri, because it gives us a nice example of looking at facilities beyond kind of a typical, city boundary. In this case, because it's in St. Louis, you can see here, if you're familiar with the area, the Mississippi River divides Missouri and Illinois. And so for my address, when I do a 10-mile search, I'm actually getting some facilities across the river as well in Illinois. So again, it gives a nice way to really look at a community and see the facilities that are within 10 miles of that community. You can always change the search radius if you want to, using this option on the left. There's a few different ways to change the map in terms of the presentation. The default view is sizing and coloring the facilities by release quantities. I did also mention that RISI model. So if you want to look at results based on that, you can just use these different features. And if you needed more information on what this potential risk score from RISI means, there's pop-ups embedded throughout here that just provide additional tooltips, navigation, things like that, just to help. And on all these pages, there's also these more info buttons that, again, provide information, in this case, about how to use the map, where you can get more information, things like that. Since this portion of the conference is focused on pollution prevention, I'll go ahead and skip to that section of this tool. But again, throughout this whole left-hand menu, there are summaries of the data for various parts of TRI reporting, whether it be releases, waste management, summaries at the facility level, different things like that. In terms of the P2 or pollution prevention data, in this version of the tool, there's just a summary by chemical, so you can see what chemicals have activities reported for them. In this case, for the 88 facilities that are near my old apartment. And you can also look at trends over time for the types of activities reported. In this case, there has been a decrease over time, though again, in many cases, the benefits of pollution prevention activities are accrued, for many years in the future. So a lot of these activities enacted several years ago, are still potentially, we're still seeing benefits from those. So even though there's been a decrease over time, that doesn't necessarily mean there's less being done. It's just newly implemented activities each year. So this is the kind of basic light version that's on the homepage. There is a link here to open the full version, which will just open up a new window and will carry over the selections from what we were just looking at. In this case, this has a lot more features and options for viewing the data. So it's pulled over those facilities for that 10-mile selection. But the default in this is the most recent 3 years. So we're now looking at a slightly larger universe of 100 facilities. These numbers at the top just give a summary as you're making selections, so how many facilities are we looking at, how many years are included. This tool includes the past 10 years, though there are plenty of places to go and get the full 30 plus years of TRI data if that's something you're interested in. On this homepage, there are different ways that if you want to start a new search or refine it, whether it's doing it by geography, selecting a particular industry sector or chemical, or even a particular facility. Again, I will just jump to the P2 section, just given the focus here. So on the pollution prevention section, there's additional summaries about the activities and how many have also reported barriers to pollution prevention. So those might be cases where a facility might have something like cost or perhaps some kind of technical feasibility that's preventing them from implementing additional pollution prevention. So on this page, you have a lot of different ways, even expanded beyond what we were looking at in the light version. I'll go ahead and click this view all pollution prevention charts, which will just show us all of the contents of these individual tabs. So we have summaries of source reduction activities by the different categories, as well as the trends over time. And for this tool, if you look in this green bar at the top, you'll see our existing selection. So I've got those facilities from my 10-mile radius, as well as, again, the most recent 3 years. If I want to make any additional selections throughout, there's this filters and options menu that has a few different options for things like sector or chemical, as well as an even more expanded menu if there were maybe a particular health point I was interested in terms of potential health effects related to the different chemicals, or even a very detailed industry sector I might be interested in. So again, lots of different ways to filter on the data in this tool. And again, for the presentation, this offers a lot more details than the homepage version. So I have a summary here of pollution prevention barriers by category. We can see here a lot of these facilities have reported that they have maxed out, or have don't have any opportunities for further pollution prevention for that particular chemical. If we want to go ahead and clear our selection on year, I can just click this X in the green bar on reporting year. And we'll now be looking at the full time span of the past 10 years. And what we'll very likely see are many other pollution prevention activities reported earlier on that if we were able to do a deeper dive with this, there are probably a lot of instances where these activities reported in early years are now being reported with the red maxed out. So again, many of these facilities may have done something in years before and just are reporting to TRI that they no longer have any additional opportunities for implementing those P2 activities. There's additional information here looking at kind of a chemical view, and there's options for looking at that again, both by as well as barriers to pollution prevention. There's a summary by location. In this case, so we're focused in on that area in St. Louis as one example. We can just look at the different zip codes in that area and see a summary by zip code. for the number of activities reported. If you're doing a different search, for example, maybe just within one state, you could rank this by county or by city, and maybe look at places where there have been a lot of activities reported, or the opposite, where there have been no activities reported and where there might therefore be opportunities to prevent pollution. Additionally, on this page, there is the list of comments that are provided by facilities. So you can see the details in this last column here for each individual report submitted that has all of the information that was reported by that facility about what they've done in terms of the activities reported. And for all of these charts and maps, you can click this download icon to just download an Excel file and pull that information offline. So in this case, I can get all the comments reported by these facilities and just take that with me offline for whatever analysis or use case I might have. Again, I was focusing here on the pollution prevention data, but this resource has plenty of other options for viewing and summarizing the data. Again, we've got a similar map here that has a few more options than the sort of light version. There is also a more detailed facility summary. For example, looking at the top facilities in this area. So in terms of that 10-mile search radius, this is looking at the top 10 facilities by release quantity, by waste management quantity, and by RISI score. So you can kind of compare and contrast across those and see, in this case, this facility does all recycling versus these ones that, have a mix of other waste management methods, different chemicals. So again, more information is in this tool than I can cover in 15 minutes or so. But it's a great resource for really being able to dive into the TRI data that's available for a particular location, however you want to define that, whether it's near your house, near a place of interest for an entire state, or even looking at the nationwide data for a particular chemical or industry sector. There's a lot of different ways to slice and dice the data. And again, the entry point to this is all just from the TRI homepage. So I'll go ahead and stop there and pause and see if there are any questions.
TJ, thank you very, very much. As you can see, everyone, the TRI Toxics Tracker tool is a very, very powerful tool. We do have one question. You kind of got into it in the last part of your presentation, but can the TRI Toxics Tracker tool be used to characterize the extent to which pollution prevention is being implemented in marginalized communities?
Yeah, so it could definitely help get you started with those types of analyses. So, if there were particular communities of interest that you knew of that might be communities with EJ concerns, you could look at what facilities are near those communities and what they've reported, or on the flip side, what they might not have reported, or if there are barriers that they've reported. There are options and ways within the tool to also rank facilities, or sorry, communities. So, if you were interested in a particular county and wanted to look at, maybe cities in that county ranked by releases to get a sense of where the most releases are occurring and therefore where there might be the most opportunity for implementing source reduction activities, you could do it that way. And there is some information in there about the demographic data associated with each facility. So it can definitely get you started, but there's certainly plenty more types of analyses that you could do to help really get at those answers about, where are there communities with environmental justice concerns, and how does that overlap with the TRI data that's reported.
Okay, thank you very, very much, TJ. So let's